Thank you for making it this far. Lastly, we will have an election systems update led by Stephen Gibson, a member of PANA and the Democratic Passing of Foothills, along with Liz Flores, a member of People Power Alpha Sigma and
Voting is important. The way we gain power, the way we change things, the way we make the changes we need and get what we need is through voting. Changes are happening in California and they're happening in LA County around how voting happens. We will be following patterns set in Colorado and in Oregon. Oregon in 2016, Oregon had the largest increase in voter turnout. So hopefully there'll be some positive changes here in Los Angeles County and in California. Liz Flores is going to give a presentation about some of these changes that'll be happening this year and in 2020 in the election system here in LA County. Liz?
Hi, I'm going for that photo, so I'm going to talk really quickly. Can we go to the next slide, please? Basically, what's happening, these are the most important questions. The thing that's happening is the Voting Solutions for All People Act was passed in 2016. There are some really big changes that are happening starting pretty soon. So the biggest change is voting is going to go from 1 day to a voting period of 11 days. The second big thing is voting centers are basically replacing what we know today as the polling stations. The third thing is it's becoming a little bit more technologically advanced. You can start utilizing your phones or tablets to have an interactive sample ballot. It'll give you a QR code that you can utilize at the actual polling or voting center the day that you go. The next thing is, next slide please, thank you. When is this happening? The most important thing is it's not happening in 2018. It's happening in 2020 in time for the primaries that are scheduled for March. It's been already rolled out by a couple of counties in 2018. It was a optional kind of thing that you could option into, and these counties decided to try it out early. Next slide. So why is this happening is a really important thing. The number one thing is the voter turnout. LA County's voter turnout is pretty dismal comparatively to the rest of California, the rest of the United States. In 2018, for the midterms, it was about 18.5% of the total registered voters. So the most important thing is, oops.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. The most important thing is the 5 counties that adopted the system early in 2018 for the midterms, it was actually, their voter turnout was 10% higher than the rest of the state. So people are really banking on these changes to facilitate people actually going to the polls. Basically move towards vote by mail across the board. Third thing is the voting equipment is pretty old. All of us who've been to the polls know that some of the machines are older than some of the people in this room. So it was a pretty important thing and it's timely. So the good thing is flexibility, super wicked important. The more time to vote, more location options. There's same-day registration. A lot of the people in the 2004 election said that basically accessibility was one of the #1 reasons why they didn't go to vote. Accessibility, so everything is, the voter centers are ADA compliant, and for some people, especially like Asians who have bad eyesight, everything is very, what's the word? You can basically make the print bigger, make it smaller. It's very easy for people to actually read the ballots and vote. That encourages especially people who are a bit older, some of the older demographics. Transparency is important. It's electronic interface, paper ballots, so if you want to start auditing. And then voters can confirm online when their actual ballot is counted. Third thing is no more reliance on the printed rosters. So the thing that happened this year with the midterms where a lot of names were left off of the printed rosters is not going to happen again. Next, please. So the bad, question mark. Lack of public knowledge regarding these changes. Raise your hand if you guys knew about these things that are happening. So I think it's kind of popular theory that this is because people don't want to mess this up for the 2018 elections because it is so important. And obviously if people think they have 11 days to vote instead of the 1 day, it's probably going to be a problem. So it's really important that as soon as the midterm elections, as soon as the 2018 elections are done, there needs to be a humongously aggressive education campaign around this. Second thing is the threat of hacking. Obviously there's a push towards open source, and there's some controversy around whether or not the system is actually open source or not, or just going towards paper ballots completely. Third thing is the most important thing in my opinion. It's the concerns around the elimination of polling places. So the plan would reduce the total number of polling stations by about 33%, from 4,000 to about 1,000. As you can see on the slide, in some of the counties it went from 548 polling places to 78 vote centers. Now the vote centers are supposed to be able to accommodate more voters. It's larger. The staff are supposed to be well trained, a bit more trained, let's say, than some of the volunteers that staff the polling stations. But it is a problem, especially for communities that may not have reliable transportation, especially in LA County, since we're so famous for our great public transportation, and older voters, lower income or minorities. So obviously us as the API community. Next. So after all this is said, what can we do? The number one thing is make sure, obviously everyone in here is registered to vote, but make sure that everyone you know is registered to vote. Be that really annoying friend. The second thing is double check your registration. There's a website here. This makes very important. Make sure that your registration information is accurate in time for not only obviously the 2020, but definitely the 2018. Make sure that you guys check on this for every election. Second thing is to educate yourself and others. The vsap.lavote.net. This is where you can find all of the most recent press releases, some of the more detailed information on how the polling centers or voting centers will work, as well as the machines. And then the third, as well as kind of like conference calls that you guys can dial into where they're getting more community input. If you have any concerns, you can definitely go here as well and log them. The third thing is, in relation to the move from polling stations to vote centers, this is where you can suggest locations for vote centers. It's live right now. The county actually has not yet told anyone when the suggestions are going to be accepted until, but this is where you can kind of go to make sure that your communities or communities you know may be negatively affected by this would be represented. So this is where you're going to go and you're going to volunteer, or not volunteer, but recommend some of the places for potential identification for vote centers. And this is the most important thing you can do. Like I said, it is live right now. We don't really know until when it is going to be live, so strike when the iron's hot. But yeah.
All right, congrats to everyone. We've made it to the end. Thanks to each one of you for investing time and effort to be with us. And we want to say thanks to everyone who made the API Agenda Forum possible, especially to all of our presenters and volunteers. Let's move beyond resistance to envision bold, progressive solutions to meet the urgent needs of our families and communities. And to make these solutions a reality, we need mass movements everywhere, within and outside the API community, all pushing for a political and economic system that's responsive to the needs of regular people on all these issues. So I'm happy there are friends of the API community here with us today who are also hard at work representing the interests of 99%, and we're just going to introduce a couple of them to you. So When you're mentioned, would you please just stand so we can recognize you? We have Carlos Marroquin, lead organizer of Bernie Sanders Brigade. We have Melissa Michelson, president of And we also have Robert Nelson and his wife, Peggy Renner. They are members of the Democrats of Pasadena Foothills Club. And we just want to take just a couple minutes. DSA. Oh, and DSA. He's also founder of DSA. So wanted to provide a couple minutes for anyone who wants to have the mic, share a couple comments with us. So feel free.
Yes.
I don't need the mic. I just want to say thank you so much for giving the community this forum. It was really informative. Thank you for everybody for participating and being here. You're not paid for this, right? This is your Saturday. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We couldn't have the participation we wanted because after we started with the program, there's so much stuff to say and we had to cut it down, we had to really cut it down. So we really encourage you to stay afterwards so that, you can engage Kenneth or any one of the people who presented. It was really interesting and really great. And I hope that, yes.
Can I take the mic?
You want to say something?
Yeah, I did. I'm Selena Kwan, and I am part of the on the International Leadership Committee of the Stanford Asian Pacific Islander American Alumni Club. And we haven't been as activists in previous years. I've served on the board over a couple of decades. I'm a graduate from the 80s. So now we've actually made a shift in terms of what we're wanting to do. And so anything that I can do for anybody, this is part of our first, help us learn what to do.
I encourage you to stay and to talk, and to hang. Just want to reiterate what I was saying at the beginning, that things like this, we need to keep this going. When we prepared the program, we carefully chose a lot of the people who are the frontline activists so that we can continue to work together. Because these kinds of things in this area, this neighborhood, is happening all over the nation right now. There was a Left Coast Forum that just happened. And one of the lessons that came out of it was that everywhere in the country, like Richmond Progressive Alliance, people hear that? Richmond Progressive Alliance? There, Jackson, Mississippi, when Chokwe Lumumba became mayor and the Malcolm X grassroots movement elected them in, they're having experiments like this too, where a bunch of people like this, frontline activists, come together, and they're the ones who vet candidates, they're the ones who choose the issues, they're the ones who have debates about what should happen positively in their community. Okay? We need to fight the defensive fights. We've all been doing that, okay? But to take it beyond the 50-yard line and to actually score a touchdown, that means we win policy, we win power. And that's what we need to do. So we need to stay together and keep at it, and keep meeting and talking, okay? Thank you very much.
And I know that both David Munkala and Minali are far too modest to give themselves credit for the hard work that they did to make this possible. Also, I'd like to give a recognition to Vivian Matsushita for hosting some of the PANA meetings, as well as Mark Masaoka, who's kindly opened up the Asian, the APCON office in the Fashion District so we can meet. I want to encourage everyone in this room, no matter what your ancestry is, to get involved with the Progressive Asian Network for Action. We meet on the second Sundays of the month, as mentioned before, but please spread the word. We can only do what people who get involved make happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
No,
that
sorry.
one?
No, I just wanted to, you were still doing those little announcements and whatnot?
Sure.
Oh, just really quick, if you've not heard about the Public Bank LA Charter that's coming up, the amendment, I think Carlos is really good at explaining how that could affect everything that's happening here, but, you know, just bare bones, just please vote yes on the Charter Amendment B, because that's gonna bring, if you live in the city of LA, tell everybody you know, it's gonna bring the possibility for a future bank, a public bank, a municipal bank, taking away the money from private banking interests and putting it back into the hands of the people where it should belong. And then the people, the government, could then decide to use it for what we need, not what bankers want to do with it.
Thank you everyone for coming, and let's enjoy some refreshments and mingle and continue our conversations and coalition
There's
building.
also literature over here. People
And
should check
literature
out.
over there. Thank you everyone.